Myself, Suraj Shah. I'm a psychologist by profession, and I'm also a teacher. I teach psychology. I'm also a Jain by religion, so philosophy, religion, spirituality has really intrigued me. And of course, psychology and spirituality, there's a thin line. So we do study spirituality and religion because it does influence people, the way they think, the way they feel, the decisions they take, especially on a land like India, where a lot of our lives revolve around religions. I would say that Diksha does fit in the framework. If you are aware, there's a very famous theory by Maslow. It's called hierarchy of needs. So basically, it starts with a triangle, like a pyramid, where the lower needs are physiological, security, esteem, which most of the people in world keep looking for. However, Maslow said as people start transcending the lower needs, they start, going towards the apex, which is the higher needs. That's where the need for self-exploration, need for self-actualization starts coming in. So technically speaking, yes, Diksha, we can put Diksha in the higher needs where the person has gotten saturated with the material world and wants to look something more, something beyond. So to say that intrinsically humans have been carrying an instinct or a drive to go beyond the material world or the pleasures of that the material life offers. So definitely Diksha can be contextualized in modern psychology. Ideally speaking, this psychological conflict is really romanticized that, oh, there's a battle within me, and no, but a part of me saying I want the material light, but a part of me is telling me I want the spiritual light. Technically speaking, if you're in such a dilemma, you're not yet ready for Diksha. The psychological conflict that you're talking is normalized to the extent that we feel it's romanticized and glorified that, oh, now I have to fight with myself and choose this or this. But ideally speaking, as per the Jain scriptures, and also as per the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's only when you're ready to transcend the lower, then there is no conflict, but it's a natural outcome. It's transcendence. It's not a conflict. It's not supposed to be a conflict. If there is a conflict, it's definitely a sign of prematurity. And probably you're not yet ready to transcend. As I mentioned, Diksha is like an epitome of when you transcended the lower needs, when there is a natural search and inquiry for something beyond the material world. And now it's not just inquiry. Self-realization is where you have attained the fourth gunstan. That is when Jainism offers 14 stages of spiritual development. And when you have reached the fourth stage, okay, where you've experientially recognized yourself, that is, you have an experiential realization it will not the body, then the householder kai starts, which is the fifth kunstan. Yet Jainism does not tell you to leave. Okay, you've got the wisdom, a glimpse of the wisdom, experiential wisdom. Then the Jainism tells you, wait, embody it. And then comes the final stage where the power of the inner experience or the solace that you start seeking within is so powerful that now leaving world is a natural calling. It's a natural urge or a yearning for the soul that now I want to completely go within and stabilize within. That's the natural outcome of what? Outcome of experiential realization, which starts at fourth. You embody it in bits and parts by fifth, and sixth is where there's a radical shift and you are ready to transcend the material world and start your journey into stabilizing within. So that's where I see Diksha as a brilliant opportunity, that you are under no obligation. You are under no financial obligations, no relational obligation, and hence you're not hurting anyone, and hence you are in a perfect, the context, the environmental context, where nobody is going to come in your way to actually go within and stabilize within. So that's the beauty of the path designed for people who have reached sixth Kunstana. Talking from pure Jaina perspective, Jainism does not bind a person's Gunsthanak to a biological age. I could, in my previous lives, been a monk for many lives and would have achieved fourth Gunsthana, fifth Gunsthana, and a small nudge in this birth, when I'm a child, is enough for me to again regain my consciousness to that spiritual level. And then I may be at 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, and I'm ready. So Jainism, in terms of biological age, does not restrict anyone to take Diksha. Of course, 8 is the minimum that is said, but that's a very absolute, and in theory, it sounds good and it holds true. But in theory, similarly, Jainism gives a number like, okay, if you meditate for 48 minutes, in theory, you're supposed to get liberated. 48 minutes is enough to sit and meditate, but that is a number which is in principle true. In terms of absolute principle, it is true. But does it really translate in the reality? That's a very big question that we should ponder upon. So, age is not a constraint, but in terms of 14th Gunsthana, 5th Gunsthana, you have to be a 5th Gunsthana in order to go 6th. So that is a strict spiritual criteria that Jainism holds, that until you are experienced self experientially, not parroted, then reached 5th where you have started to embody, and 6th, only then you are ready to go for 6th. So the spiritual criteria definitely is non-negotiable. Of course, that spiritual criteria is not dependent or contingent upon the biological age, but is there any way we can bypass it and just kind of prematurely jump from 1st to 6th by just changing your clothes or lifestyle? That's not how shallow Jainism is. It's profoundly grounded in your inner state. So external behavior is a reflection of the inner change. And that's what modern psychology believes. Cognitive behavior therapy believe unless a cognition is changing, how do you expect someone's behavior to change? So the change in behavior is always led by change in cognition. So your entire behavior, right from your external demeanor to where you stay, how you carry yourself, to your lifestyle, if that's a radical shift, how can it not be grounded in experiential inner transformation? So that's what Jainism would talk on this. See, in Jainism, they do not want to keep a biological age. The minimum is 8 basically, but they are not restricting. The reason for saying that, okay, someone as young as 8 can technically take Diksha is just to not confine a very evolved soul to a certain age, so that they don't, it's only meant for the anomalies, technically speaking. For example, in Jainism, you could count on fingers, maybe 400 years back or 500 years back after Lord Mavi, you could count on fingers how many people have actually taken Diksha when they were young. Some souls that as profound as Sri Hemchandracharya, who was a Karikal Sarvagya, so he had a history of many births to be a very enlightened soul of a huge spiritual caliber. Hence, Jainism says, okay, there are such souls, we don't want to restrict them to a particular biological age that they have to wait till 18 or 20. No. Hence, the rule is only for such anomalies, but can we make exceptions? The rule is a big question. So that's what my take would be. Whole religious context to this is that yes, the metaphysics behind this is the soul and body are not the same. Hence, you can say that evolution of the soul cannot be dependent on my body. That is the fundamental metaphysical context. But then the bigger question comes, is the soul really evolved? And how do we know that? How do we know? That's a big question. Now the Jainism says, just because if a child is showing a lot of inclination or is able to, memorize a lot of things or is convinced out of fear, are these really a reflection of a matured soul? So the criteria for the soul has to be 6th Gunsthana, be it 75 years old or you be 9 years old. But you better meet the criteria. If you're not meeting the criteria, even an 80-year-old or a 40-year-old man will be rejected, ideally speaking, for that, no, you're not ready to go to 6th. First reach 4th, then reach 5th, and then reach 6th. Counter to this, within Jaina context would be, okay, the concept of Dravyalingi. The Dravyalingi means, okay, you're not attained 4th Gunsthana yet you want to take Diksha. it is allowed. It's not like a complete no-no. However, if you are compromising on a spiritual maturity, then I would say better you at least compensate it by biological and cognitive maturity. You are neither having a spiritual maturity of 6th Gulsthanam, and you neither have biological and cognitive and social maturity of that that to make you eligible to get Dravelingi. Then on what basis are you taking Diksha? To just add to my previous point, I remembered, as I told that in last 2000 years, it would be on fingers that we could count people, taking Diksha when they were kids. In fact, none of the Tirthankaras themselves have taken child Diksha. So are we saying that a Tirthankara who's born with 3 gnans, when he has such an evolved soul who comes with out of 5, almost 3 gyans. He's such an evolved soul. He has self-realization. His act, a very evolved soul. Still, if Tirthankaras have not taken child Diksha, are we saying that today's 8-year kid is more profound than a Tirthankara to be eligible to take Diksha? That's a fundamental question that people should answer. Number 2, are we saying that the person who is giving the Diksha is competent enough to judge whether the child had either the past lives or samskars? Is the person who is giving Diksha taking the guarantee that okay, the child may not be spiritually evolved, or the child may not be, biologically or cognitively evolved, like it may not show, but is the person who is giving Diksha confident? Experientially, is he giving a guarantee that the child in his past lives has had a super caliber, or with a little nudge, soon he will reach 6th Gulsthana? If the person who's taking that, giving Diksha, is taking that guarantee, okay, an authentic, a genuine guarantee, only then it's worth it. Otherwise, it's going to be like a blind leading another blind. Yeah. So it's a very big question. If the person himself is giving Diksha, can he say that is at least reached 6? If he himself has not reached 6 and he is a Dravya that on what basis is he giving Diksha and playing with the life of a child? Okay, the child may give you a lot of reasons and rationales, but is it equivalent to 6th Gulsthana? That is my first question. And we have criteria for 6th Gulsthana. Why has suddenly Diksha become a big trend? Number 1, even in terms of the economy and social, we have reached a point where we have stable lifestyles. At least millennials have reached a point where their parents have made a house for them. We have a stable income. Hence now more and more people definitely we have the privilege and access to be listening to spirituality, and we see an overall movement in the country where there's a lot of spirituality upcoming, which is a good thing. I appreciate that. In previous times, there was so much poverty that nobody had time for this. So of course the kids had to first, there was a lot of, as I again told in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people were struggling with the lower needs. Okay, from last, if you see 1000 years, India has been attacked, and we never got a sigh of relief. We are just been struggling as a nation. I think last 50 years we can say relatively we had a stable life. Hence, definitely kids have more access to religion, and also there is more freedom. So if the small kid says, oh, I'm convinced I want to take a Diksha, we have the freedom that our parents have evolved enough to give us the freedom, okay, take. They're not going to say, okay, don't take. Maybe probably 200 years back, the parent would say, no, you have to take care of me when I grow old. But nowadays, parents do say, okay, do if this is what you want. Number 2. Number 3, there is no access, as I said. Parents themselves have become more religious. So definitely the whole idea the Jainism has got more alive, I would say. But the larger question is, just because kids have more access, and they're definitely intelligent, I'm not saying they're not intelligent, they are logically getting convinced that this is the path, okay? Does it mean again, they reached the 6th Gulsthana? That is the first question. Second question I want to ask, let's say teenagers. Now there is a term known as Dukkha Garbhit Vairagya. Dukkha Garbhit Vairagya means trauma-induced dissociation or trauma-induced that oh, world is a bad place. So many youngsters or let's say kids are coming with an idea that oh, world is a very bad place. Or they might have had one breakup and say, oh, now I just want to escape and I want to live a monastic life. But again the question is it equivalent to sixth Kunstana that you have a radical shift into your life? That is a question that we should ponder on. Of course, it could be a great starting point. Trauma-induced existential crisis is excellent starting point for one to turn inwards. So reach fourth, reach fifth, and then probably once you reach a state of inner stability, when you depriving yourselves of sensory pleasures, but you have reached a state of inner realization to stabilize within, then it's a fair compensation. But imagine the pity of a person who has deprived himself of the sensory pleasures and has no experience within. It is unscientific, it's unpsychological, and it is, absolutely inhuman. It's unspiritual. To deprive but not connect, it's basic logic. So then where are we heading? What are we expecting from those people? And let me tell you, the same society which gives the Diksha very happily to a small kid, now when those kids grow to teenagers and in case, let's say they had a lapse in their conduct, let's say they got attracted or they had any form of, lax, the same society doesn't think twice and removes them from the Diksha. But aren't they human? And we should have a statistics of people who are thrown out of Diksha, who are told to leave without any rehabilitation. And why? Because it's a natural course of development. So in the very first place, they were not mature and evolved enough. And when poor teen, you have deprived them of the senses and they are trying to find, because they've also not got the self experience, and then they are looking for, it's human that they have found somewhere, then we are not even taking accountability of that. Rather, we are gaslighting those kids or those souls, or that it's a lapse and you are a bad person or a bad muni. But again, where is the accountability in that case? So it should not be a surprise if that is happening, that to a souls of Kalyu, of fifth era, where we are in general a fragile and vulnerable soul. So one of the core arguments that is given in Jainism, which is the nurture argument, that we'll give a kid such an environment from the beginning so that there's no exposure of the material life, there is no exposure to the world, and then automatically the child's psyche gets cultivated and molded, which is perfect for monkhood, and the soul will get liberated very fast. Of course, it sounds very lucrative, and that way we should just put all the kids into a regime that they don't get exposed to the world outside. Okay, this is a similar thing that the Buddha was never exposed to any bad things on the world and only kept in a bubble. But the larger question is, the inherent tendency of the soul did come out. In case of Buddha, even if he was protected from see any of the existential crisis and only being seen the material world, but his inner tendency did surface where he got a nudge of the outside world. So that's where the idea of nature versus nurture, that is, Purva Samskars interact with the environment and then a behavior is created. So this is a principle accepted in psychology also, that nature and nurture interact and then it leads to a certain kind of personality. Now to say this, that okay, I'm going to bring up the child only in this environment, are we negating the fact that the child may not have any Purva Samskars? Number one. Number two, are you claiming that you are clairvoyant enough to see the past lives of the child and say, oh, the Purva Samskars are excellently good and sattvic, and I take the guarantee that the child will never have an inclination, at his young adulthood or adulthood? Number two. And number three, are we disregarding the biological course of development which the child will anyways have as the child grows up? So, what if the child has taken Diksha at 9 or 10, but by 16, 17 or 18, as the Purva Sanskar starts surface in which Jainism totally accepts that Ved Karma can, which is the sexual passions can start arising,
what is a child supposed to do at that point when he reaches adulthood and he feels like he's never even experienced, he's taken a Diksha even before he's seen the world, and then it surfaces and he's helpless. So my point is, if you feel the child is genuinely meant for Diksha, even exposing them to the world, if the soul is truly carrying the tendency, why are you afraid that seeing the world is going to make the soul go haywire? No, not really. In fact, from a very psychological perspective, by age of 25, if you have seen the world, and under the guidance of the Guru, who's continuously giving the right lens and perspective, you process the world out, you process your biology, then if the wisdom is arises that no, there is something more, there is the right maturity. Out of right maturity, you will be taking Diksha. But it's going to be extremely, and that is more certain, that the foundations of the Diksha are strongly rooted in understanding and having seen the world the way it is. But me not getting exposed to the world since childhood, and then my past tendencies surfacing, then what are the foundations of my Diksha? Are they grounded in actually having seen the world? And what if then the curiosity arises? Who's going to take the accountability of this? Again, it boils down to, is the Guru really competent enough to have seen the past lives of the soul? Number one. And number two, is the child having such a readiness in true sense? Only then it would be a mature and a wise decision. And to answer the nurture argument, I am coming with a simple proposal. If you want to safeguard the child from the external or the bad material influences, Diksha is not the answer. You keep them, you make hostels, you make wonderful, schools which are based in Jainism. Maybe bring them up in Gurukul for a long time and let them evolve, let them study, and once they are ready, put them into the Diksha. But just because I want to safeguard by the child is giving them a radical shift of lifestyle change, is this really justified? And are we not confident upon our ability to help the child navigate the world till he reaches 25 years of age, see the world by and help them to actually extract the meaning out of the world, and that meaning is then the wisdom to actually pursue Diksha. See, as I said, the scriptures clearly say it is allowed. As I said, in absolute principle, yes. Even scripture says 48 minutes of meditation should be enough. Similarly, scripture says 8 years is enough for one to even achieve omniscience. But that is what the absolute principles are. But do they translate into the current psychological context, social context, and the spiritual context? These three are a very big question. And to be very honest, when I see these young kids leaving the mother and going towards Diksha, from a very psychological perspective, it breaks my heart. I can tell you, Bhagwan Mahavir was so sensitive towards his own mother. Being a Tirthankar, I'll tell you, is epitome of empathy that he's actually shown for Kalyu. He was the last Tirthankar. When he was in the womb of the mother, he was so concerned about mother. Is my mother being affected by my movements? So he decided to not move. Also, Bhagwan Mahavir, after he was born, he decided, I will not take Diksha until my parents are alive. Imagine Tirthankara, who is supposed to be a savior of the world, carries the responsibilities to, show entire world the path. He decides, world aside, but I cannot make my parents go through. He knew the hearts of the Kalyug people are so fragile that they won't be able to let me go. So he decides, until my parents are alive, even if the world's Kalyan is at stake, so be it. But I will not hurt my parents. Imagine the mothers crying when they are letting go of their kids. Has Bhagwan Mahavir taught us to be so apathic towards our parents? Number one. Number two, I'll tell you, step ahead. When Bhagwan Mahavir's own parents passed away, the brother was so sad. He was in actually depression, as per what they say. He says, Bhagwan Mahavir, wait for one more year, no, don't go. I want to be, be around me. Imagine he waits for 1 more year. Why? Again, empathy towards his own brother. So all I'm trying to say, the current social context, if you are the only child, and there are cases where only child have been taking diksha, if the parents say no, they are shamed and guilt trip. That how are you not? You're coming in the way of your child's progression. That's not fair. And I absolutely feel it's not fair on the parent. So there's a social lens also to this. And in current circumstances, we are living in our lives where there are no joint families, where are parents wrong in expecting their kid to be wanting to be for them when they grow up? And are they coming in their way? The second question. One of the very important things which Jains at some point had was between Shravak Shravikas and Munis, there used to exist a middle path which, though with time got lost in time, however, Digambars still have that system of Bhattaraks. Let me give an interesting perspective. As per scriptures, the most common known thing is that Bhagwan showed two marks. Either you become a householder, if you don't have the spiritual maturity yet, stay with a partner who is a pious and a spiritual partner, evolve along with your partner, do your household duties, enjoy the world in certain framework and a structure in a certain boundary so that you don't harm others. But okay, if you're not evolved to transcend the material world, live in the material world but within the framework of spirituality. That is a totally accepted mark. Why was it given? That's the first question. Okay, now there's another mark which is of being a monk, where you're done with material world and there's a genuine calling and a spiritual maturity of wanting to transcend the material world and going absolute monastic way where you are completely letting go of the material world. However, there also existed a middle path where people are kind of evolved but yet not able to completely let go. So there could be a middle path which could be in the fifth Gurusthanam, to say fourth or fifth, where there is inner calling to not get into completely into getting married, having kids, at the same time still not ready to live a monastic way. That system existed. Those were known as yatis or probably Bhattaraks in Digambar system. In Shwetambar system, probably yatis, or I don't know the technical name, but scriptures say, or Chaitya Purush. Yes, Chaitya Purush was also, basically those are the people who would stay in the temple premises, would take care of the temple. Also, they were not taken the vrats to the maximum limit. So they had some more boundary than what a Shravak would, but not so stringent that of a monk. And they could spend their life that ways also. To this extent, Theravada, which is in existing, they have been one of the most progressive paths where before giving anybody initiating them into the monkhood, they initiate them into the middle path. And you stay that at least for some time. And till you're not confident, you're not allowed to take ahead. And they can travel, they can study, they can, spread, they can do social work. So why the middle path? So that you can first, you are getting spiritually refined. At the same time, you are learning and using all the energies that you have. And then once you reach a point where now you are ready to completely go within, only then you go there. So unfortunately with time, that path got, lost in time. However, this is the exact time where they need to revive it. And if a child or a youngster is interested, simple. Let them become Chaitya Purush. Let them study in a very protected environment. We have so many temple premises. Convert one temple premises. Let them have a community living. Let them spend at least to their graduation, post-graduation in Jainology. And then once they are ready, if they feel this is after your brain is completely developed at 25, then I think it's the right time to make the jump. All I'm trying to tell is delay the process so that you're more certain about the foundations. What is the hurry? To give you one more thing, from scriptures it says, one more argument which is given is, Diksha is the only way to get moksha. And if you are in material world, then to your moksha cannot happen only. You have to take Diksha. And the second rationale is given, if you are in sansar, in the material world, you are accumulating a lot of karma, you are doing a lot of pa, then to Baba your mukti is not This is a very simplistic argument which is sold to these young kids, and they are like, oh, they start feeling afraid and anxious. They're like, oh, here there's a lot of karma. I have to take diksha so that minimum violence happens. Then I'll go to moksha. To this, Shastra gives a very clear warning. We have taken diksha in past to the extent that the entire Mount Meru, okay, which is like a tallest mountain metaphysically, okay, they say, you are taken diksha, so many dikshas in past. Still, you have not got mukti. So what was missing? The Shastras warn that don't go by the simple logic by changing clothes and a lifestyle and doing minimal violence that guarantees moksha. That is the biggest myth which Shastra is warning loudly. How are we ignoring that, and how are we selling the same argument to the people? Whereas the clear criteria Shastra says, without transformation, inner transformation, no external change, no changing demeanor is going to lead you anywhere. Yes, if you're being lesser violent in Diksha, at the most you will get Swarga. That is you are doing less karma, you will go to Swarga. Will you get moksha? No. So unfortunately, this wisdom is missing. Look at all the, pre-Diksha kids give speeches. I am taking Diksha. You do a thematic analysis and it's only this. The rationale is this. There is no rationale beyond this. The actual rationale is when I am at 4th Gunsthana, I have experienced myself, I got a glimpse of myself. I could be anyone. I could be a robber. I could be a thief. I could be a prostitute. Still I can be at 4th Gunsthana where I have realized self or a glimpse. Then I go to 5th. What is self-realization? Realizing that I'm not the body. I'm a formless being and I am myself the source of bliss. You get a glimpse. Then you go to 5th Gunsthana where you become a householder and you start meditating every day, morning and evening. And then you start stabilizing more and more to the extent now the inner pull is so strong that now you say, now I can't stay in this material world. I have such a strong pull to stabilize within myself. That's where you go to 6. And that's where you are ready to deprive yourself of the sensory pleasures because there is no need in the first place. And if you have not reached and you don't want to go there, so I highly recommend let's bring the past system of Chaitya Purush or let's learn from Therapanthis, the system of Shaman Shamni. Let these kids, teenagers, let them come. Most welcome. You're inclined to come. We'll put you in a community living for 10 years. Get your basic education in a protected environment so your nurture argument gets ticked and stay in that environment. Get at least a bachelor's in Jainology. Okay? And then live like a monk in the way, live, with some restrictions. Live, get a feel of the lifestyle for at least 10 years. By the time you're 25, why am I saying 25? Neurologically speaking, your brain fully develops by 25. Then if you are ready, take the next jump. And if not, with no shame, you can get married. There is absolutely no shame. Is this logic so difficult? And are we in such a hurry to get a kid where we are not sure if he's at 6th Gunsthana? We are not sure if he's cognitively and socially developed. We are not even sure whether the guru who is giving is actually clairvoyant enough and self-realized enough. And also where the Shastra is warning that this may be one more additional diksha to your heap of the mountain. We know the 4 things. You're so uncertain. And why not wait for 10 more years in a protected space and then give them diksha? So I am all in for diksha. I hold diksha in the highest regard. It's like a PhD program. But the requisite for PhD is masters. Can you do masters by grade? But when you're 10 or 12, yes, there are exceptional kids who, skip. Yes, there are exceptional gifted kids who do their with board exams in 6 years, like 10 years, and there are exceptional kids. But they have to meet the requirement of intellectual requirement of master's program to get enrolled for the PhD program. Similarly, in Jainism, you could be exceptionally gifted soul. You have to meet the criteria of 6th, at least 5th, and reaching 6th to be able to take diksha. Does moksha happen when you take diksha, the prerequisite? Yes, in principle, absolutely yes. That imagine how do you reach the 14 Gunstana if you have not crossed 6? So the argument is absolutely correct that 14 cannot be reached by 6. But does it mean that I'm not reached 6 but I pretend to be at 6 under the guise that okay, now I reach 14? You understanding? So the idea is to get PhD, masters is enough and it's the best thing to do. Okay, so kids will say the whole purpose of human life is to take Diksha. That is the best. Of course, PhD is the best thing. But just because it's the best thing and you are in grade 5, can you push me to getting a PhD even if it's the best thing? No, because I am not ready. So, is for getting PhD is master's prerequisite? Yes. Okay, to get a doctorate is PhD a prerequisite? Yes. To get moksha is leaving the material world and abiding within? Yes, it is a prerequisite. But prerequisite as a result of inner transformation. All I'm trying to say, if you externally, in terms of your demeanor, take Diksha, but in terms of inner transformation, you are at first stage. Jainism says, sorry, you cannot by any way get moksha even if you have taken Diksha were one heap of a mountain. What is the prerequisite for moksha? Not Diksha, but inner transformation, which gets reflected by naturally into your external demeanors. So all the external changes are actually a byproduct of the inner transformations. So the first to 14 stages of development are stages of inner transformation where the changing of demeanor, etc. is just a reflection of that. Now we are going reverse. We are like, oh, we'll just mimic the reflections, assuming that this is happening with Jainism. Absolutely disagrees too. And we have ample and ample and ample of examples. If you ask any monk that have I taken Dikshas worth a heap of mountain? Yes, everybody has. But am I moved? No. What was missing is the inner transformation. And with inner transformation, Diksha is the best thing to do. Imagine you have realized yourself. Imagine you are able to have no obligations and actually meditate more and more and more, and you are in absolute samadhi, transcendence. How wonderful, you are under no obligations. And you live with no second thought of where will I get food also. It exempts you from even thinking about my next meal. That is the structure that Bhagwan has designed for people who are meant for it, who have reached that stage. So all I'm trying to say is, if a kid in grade 5 says, oh, I want to go to NASA and astrophysics is he starts reading some books, he starts Googling about it, he starts talking to everybody about astrophysics. Does it mean you put him in a spaceship? No, you will like, okay, you like astrophysics, no? Now I will ensure and I will make you read more and more. But masters, so you have to do. Then they think you are sending to NASA. But without the training in a spaceship, just because it's the best thing to do, just because I'm inclined, just because my world is not a good place and spaceship seems very lucrative, just because I get to see the space only when I board in a spaceship, that doesn't mean that you put me in a spaceship. Okay? And the Shastras say, last thing to tell you is, if you are at Kunsthanak 1 and let's say by chance or by suppression you reach 10th Kunsthanak, 10th by suppression, you will fall back to first. So this is so beautiful that Jain Shastras knew the concept of repression and suppression. This is exact answer to the nature argument that okay, you are suppressing me, you are isolating me from the world, so my sanskars are suppressed. I'm not process the world. I'm not transform myself, and I even let's say reach 10th Kunsthanak by suppression. But they say one nudge from the world and you will fall back to them first. So I'll go a little bit in scriptural knowledge. Experiential self-realization are of two types. One is that happens by chance or by glimpse, and one is which is actually processed. Glimpse is, for example, let's say you take a drum. And sometimes people get out of the body experiences when they take a psychedelic. And you say, oh, I realize I am not the body because I could experience myself, and that happens. and people come for ketamine therapy. People experience out of the body experience. It's very common. But does it mean you may say that, okay, somewhere I've got a conviction I'm not this body? Or people who get near that experiences and they realize that they're not the body. Fair enough. But it's still unprocessed, coincidental experience. Jainism says, okay, good. But you have to still, this is known as Upshamik Samkit. Upsham means somewhere you got it. But Shayopshamik Samkit is where it's got out of actual transformation and process. So that is unshakable. Once you reach fourth means Shayopshamik, then you go fifth. Where you are based on actual transformation, you start abiding yourself for some time. Even after getting Shayopshamik Samkit at fourth, Jainism says no, you can't take Diksha. First go to fifth and then take sixth. So that is the nuance that Jainism gives. And these are the contraindications Jainism gives. The flip side of taking Jainism is not glorifying Diksha. It's giving you all the red flags also. It's giving a very balanced view that are you ready for it? Because it holds Diksha at a very high pedestal. It's not a joke. If I have this like, oh, I am the parent of the child and I will take the decision for my child. Diksha is the only right thing and I'm depriving my child of the material world and not allowing him to process the world. I don't know from a very psychological level, what if the child after 10 years says that I was deprived to experience the world? And who were you to take that decision when I was not in the capacity to take a decision for myself? So these are some ethical questions that also arise, which we may very conveniently say, but I know from large scheme, in a larger context, this is a right thing, but for you, but not probably for the child. So it breaks my heart. And I'm genuinely saying, if you see a child who's really inclined, please open a community living. Let them get graduated in Jainology, in psychology. Let them understand. Imagine the education stops. Just education stops. So I have got such cases where I have seen young adults, forget kids, young adults who are telling me that these are the things that they are facing and now they feel caught. And I feel sorry for them, nothing but sorry for them. And they feel an additional shame in admitting that, these needs are psychological needs because, you're not supposed to say that I want love or I want attention because that would make you sound less spiritual. But as a psychologist, I understand all they're seeking is the psychological needs are unmet. And why are they unmet? Because as I told you, in the Maslow's needs of hierarchy of needs are still here. And it's not wrong for them to want that. But now they are brought in a place which was meant for this. Now there's a mismatch in what their psychological maturity is and the context they have got themselves into. And how do you fill in that? What am I supposed to counsel them? It's fundamental psychological needs that they're asking for. How do I intellectualize or rationalize them through that? No, now it's your karma or accept it. I can't do that. And they have so much of shame to come back also. So imagine we have not even kept the doors to come back open. We are giving dikshas. Chalo, child ko deke jao. Marriage has a legal way to get out. But here there is no systematic way to even get out. Are we saying that we are infallible, we are omniscient, that there is no way the person would want to? So have a structure and a dignified way for people to come out also. Wo bhi nahi hai. So there are so many gaps in our knowledge. And on the what pretext then are we giving diksha to young kids? And why not wait? What's the hurry? It's the best thing to do, but doesn't mean the best is best for everyone. Someone's food can become someone's poison. And it doesn't make us less of a Jain. In fact, it makes us a true Jain if we inquire into these aspects from spiritual, cognitive, biological perspective, and of course social perspective. We need to inquire into these aspects on a very deep level. And last thing I would want to say is we should have an external review team who should review a child. Now let's understand a logistical question. How do we ensure that the person, let's say from the entire Jain sect perspective, let's see a logistical question. If there is a small kid who's taking diksha under a certain person, the person feels I'm eligible to give the diksha. Kid says, okay, I want to take the diksha. The parent says, But there has to be a standardized way. Driving, for example, has a standard test. Marriage has a standard age. To become a doctor, there's a standard test that you pass. Similarly, we need some standardization so that if there's an eligible child, please go ahead and take. But if there is a child who is not eligible, or if the guru has not foreseen few things, we should have a panel of psychologists, of child psychologists. We should have a panel of self-realized gurus, beings, and an external panel through which some certification happens that the kid is ready to take such a great decision of life. Would we allow the kid of 10-year, 12-year to get married? No. Are we allowing a 10-year, 12-year kid to drive a car? No. And let's say if a 12-year kid falls in love with someone, they would say, okay, date, but when you become 21, get married. If those rules apply there, the same rules apply here. So that's when we need a strong body. And if we say that law and psychology is outside the purview of religion, no. The child has a mind, a child has a legal right. And if you say no, this doesn't fall under the religion purview, Sati Pratha also by that matter, or small kids ka vivah was a religious aspect. But how is law applied there but not here? So the larger question is we need to introspect and allow all the bodies to come. And why are we doing this? Are we anti-Jainism? No. For the well-being of the child, for the psychological well-being, social well-being and spiritual well-being of the child. Because well-being happens at all the three stages. And just because spiritual well-being is the most important, but it cannot happen over a mentally ill person or socially, troubled person. We need to align 3R aspects and only then allow people to take Diksha at a young age. When we forget kids, where we are educated people taking Dikshas with graduation and post-graduation, I'll tell you there is also one more problem there. When educated people take Diksha, okay, but yet not reach in a transformation, they're just educated and grown-ups. Seen the world, yes, but have they reached sixth? No. They have psychological needs. What are the psychological needs? As I told, the need for achievement, need for competency, need for recognition. These are common psychological needs. Now, when in most of the Jain traditions, female monks are not even allowed to give sermons. So they have no scope of expression. Okay. Now, when such educated people take Diksha, of course, they have psychological needs. Now they would want to do some, social work, or they would want to give sermons. Only males are the hierarchy. Females don't. Now, because of their unmet psychological needs, again they start developing a lot of psychological issues, which is also a known issue in today's times, especially in female monks. So, again, a Bhattarak or Chaitya Purusha, the middle path would be excellent for educated, adults who have not reached sixth, okay, but who want to still take Diksha. Being that middle path, use all your energies out. Do social work, open a university. Do social work, travel across globe, spread Jainism. Get your psychological needs met in a good way, in a pious way. Once you have realized, recognition there's nothing much. Now I want to go within, you are ready to take Diksha.